The morning shift at Luna Station started like any other day. Commander Jake Morrison sipped his coffee while watching the display screens that showed ships moving through Earth's space. Most of them belonged to other species from across the galaxy. Trade ships carrying goods between worlds, diplomatic vessels heading to meetings on Earth, tourist cruisers filled with aliens who wanted to see the famous blue planet where humans came from. Jake had been doing this job for 8 years. Now, he monitored space traffic, made sure everyone followed the rules, and filed reports that probably ended up in some computer database that nobody ever read. It was peaceful work, and Jake liked peace. Most humans did, which was why the galaxy saw them as harmless. The aliens thought they had humans figured out. Earth was a small player in galactic politics. Humans had decent technology, but nothing special. They were good at talking their way out of fights and helping other species solve their problems. But when it came to real power, the kind that mattered when wars started, humans were just not important enough to worry about. Jake's friend Pete Williams worked the communication desk next to him. Pete was reading reports from human colonies scattered across dozens of star systems. New Terra was having a good harvest. Riverside Colony had just opened a new university. Clearwater Station reported that their mining operations were ahead of schedule. All normal, boring news that made it seem like humans spent their time growing food and digging up rocks. Dr. Lisa Carter walked into the control room carrying a tablet filled with research data. She was one of the scientists working on quantum communication projects. The other species in the galaxy thought human quantum research was cute, but not very advanced. Lisa never bothered to correct them. "Morning, Jake," Lisa said as she checked one of the monitoring stations. "Everything quiet out there?" "Same as always," Jake replied. "The Andromedan trade convoy passed through an hour ago. 3 Zephyrian. Scout ships are heading toward the outer systems, nothing unusual." Lisa nodded and made some notes on her tablet. She did this every day, recording ship movements and communication patterns. Other species probably thought she was just a bookkeeper. They had no idea what those numbers really meant or where her reports actually went. The truth was that humans had learned something important during their first contact with alien species 200 years ago. The galaxy was full of predators, species that took what they wanted by force, empires that grew by conquering weaker civilizations. Humans had looked around and realized they had 2 choices. They could try to compete in an arms race they might lose, or they could be smart about it. So humans chose to be smart. They made themselves look harmless, while quietly building something much more powerful than anyone suspected. It was easier to let other species think humans were weak farmers and scientists than to paint a target on Earth's back. The Zephyrian Empire was the perfect example of why this strategy made sense. They controlled more star systems than any other single power in the galaxy. Their military was huge and aggressive. They had been expanding for decades, taking over worlds that could not defend themselves. Most species either joined the Zephyrian Empire voluntarily or got conquered by it. But the Zephyrians had always left human space alone, not because they were afraid of human defenses, but because they saw humans as useful. Humans made good neutral parties for negotiations. They provided food and raw materials through trade. They never caused trouble or made threats. From the Zephyrian point of view, humans were the perfect harmless neighbors. Jake checked his daily intelligence briefing while he worked. The file looked like routine information about ship movements and trade patterns. But hidden in the data were details that would have shocked every alien government in the galaxy. The Andromedan convoy that had passed through earlier was carrying military-grade shield generators disguised as farming equipment. The Zephyrian scout ships were actually testing new weapon systems that could not detect the real human monitoring stations. Dr. Carter finished her rounds and headed back to her lab. The work she did there involved experiments that made alien quantum physics look like elementary school science. But her published research papers only showed the basic stuff. The real breakthroughs stayed hidden in facilities that did not appear on any public maps. The morning continued peacefully. More ships passed through human space. More routine reports got filed. Everything looked normal and boring, exactly the way humans wanted it to look. Pete got a message from Earth's Defense Command asking for an update on long-range sensors. He sent back data showing that human detection systems could spot ships about as far as most other species could. It was completely true. Those particular sensors really did work at average galactic standards. Pete did not mention the other sensors, the ones that could track a single ship across half the galaxy. The ones that had been watching every major military movement in Zephyrian space for the past 6 months. The ones that fed information to computers calculating battle scenarios that other species could not imagine. By lunchtime, Jake had processed clearance requests for 17 different ships. He had filed traffic reports for 4 separate space lanes. He had answered 3 routine questions from alien port authorities who wanted to confirm that certain vessels had passed through human space safely. It was exactly the kind of day that made humans look like careful bureaucrats who cared more about paperwork than power. The image was so convincing that even experienced alien intelligence officers bought into it. The afternoon brought news that made Jake pay closer attention to his screens. The Zephyrian Empire had announced something they called territorial optimization in the Outer Rim systems. It was a fancy way of saying they planned to take over more worlds. The official statement talked about bringing stability and prosperity to underdeveloped regions. Jake read between the lines. The Zephyrians were planning another expansion wave. They would start with worlds that had weak defenses and valuable resources. Then they would use those conquests as stepping stones to grab bigger prizes. Several human colonies were located in the Outer Rim, places like New Terra, where 50,000 people lived peaceful lives growing crops and raising families. The Zephyrians probably saw those colonies as easy targets. Small populations, no visible military defenses, and governments that preferred negotiation over fighting. Jake made a note in his log and sent a routine report to Earth Defense Command. The message looked like standard intelligence gathering, but it triggered protocols that had been waiting silently for exactly this kind of situation. As his shift ended, Jake looked out at the stars and wondered if the galaxy was about to learn something new about humanity. He hoped not. Peace was better than war, even when you were strong enough to win. 3 months after the Zephyrian Empire announced their territorial optimization program, the first attack began. New Terra woke up to the sight of warships dropping out of faster-than-light travel above their peaceful world. Mayor Karen Brooks stood in the colony's emergency command center, watching the displays show 12 Zephyrian battlecruisers taking positions around their planet. Each ship was bigger than anything New Terra had for defense. The colony's small security force had 3 patrol boats and a handful of defensive satellites. Against a full Zephyrian battle fleet, they might as well have been throwing rocks. The Zephyrian fleet commander opened a communication channel. General Vex Thorgan appeared on the screen, his reptilian features showing the kind of confidence that came from overwhelming military superiority. Human colony New Terra, you are now under the protection of the Zephyrian Empire, Thorgan announced. Surrender your governmental authority immediately and prepare for integration into our administrative system. You have 1 hour to comply. Karen looked around the command center at her staff. Communications officer Danny Martinez was already working at his station, sending out emergency signals. Colony Defense Coordinator Linda Foster was checking the status of their few defensive systems. Everyone knew they could not fight 12 battle cruisers and win. But fighting was not the plan. Send the package, Karen told Danny quietly. Danny nodded and activated a special communication array that most people thought was just a backup system for talking to Earth. His fingers moved across controls that looked standard, but were actually connected to quantum communication equipment that could punch a signal through space faster than the Zephyrians thought possible. The message Danny sent was short and seemed routine. Just 19 words that looked like a standard emergency report. Condition Black confirmed. Authorization Lima 77 requested New Terra colony under direct military assault. To anyone listening in, it sounded like bureaucratic language from a panicked local government. The Zephyrians intercepted the signal and dismissed it as typical human administrative chatter. They had no idea they had just triggered something that would change everything. The signal reached Earth in 11 minutes. At Deep Space Monitoring Station Omega, Lieutenant Commander Alex Stone received the transmission during what should have been a quiet night shift. The station was listed in galactic databases as a minor research outpost studying cosmic radiation. Most alien intelligence services ignored it completely. Alex read the message twice, then reached for a secure communication device that was not connected to any network the aliens knew about. He forwarded the message through channels that existed in the spaces between official government departments, channels that had been waiting for exactly this kind of signal for 200 years. Within 18 minutes of New Terra's transmission, every human civilian vessel within 50 light-years received new movement orders. Merchant ships that had been carrying grain and manufactured goods suddenly changed course for predetermined evacuation points. Transport vessels that looked like ordinary passenger liners began moving toward threatened colonies, with a speed and coordination that suggested very different capabilities than their public specifications indicated. Captain Steve Anderson commanded what appeared to be a simple cargo hauler called the Meadowlark. His ship's registration listed it as a civilian transport, with basic defensive systems and a standard faster-than-light drive. When he received the signal, Steve activated systems that did not appear on any official inspection records. The Meadowlark's cargo bay reconfigured itself into an evacuation facility that could hold 800 people in emergency conditions. Her engines switched to a drive system that could cover distances in hours that should have taken days. Her hull activated armor plating that had been disguised as decorative metal panels. Similar transformations occurred across dozens of ships throughout human space. Vessels that alien port inspectors had examined and cataloged as civilian transports revealed themselves to be something much more capable. Back on New Terra, the evacuation began with the kind of efficiency that comes from careful planning and regular practice. Every colonist knew exactly where to go and what to bring. Transport vehicles that had seemed like ordinary farm equipment moved people and essential supplies to pickup points with military precision. The Zephyrians noticed the evacuation, but were not concerned. Scared civilians running away was normal behavior when a military force arrived. General Thorgan actually approved of human efficiency. It would make the occupation easier if the locals cooperated. What Thorgan did not notice was that the evacuation included things that should not have been possible. Civilian transport ships arrived at New Terra faster than their listed specifications allowed. The colonists moved with the kind of organization that suggested they had practiced this exact scenario many times before. As the deadline approached, Karen Brooks made one final transmission from New Terra's command center. This one was directed at the Zephyrian fleet and broadcast on standard communication frequencies so everyone could hear it. General Thorgan, the civilian population of New Terra is safely evacuated. Our colony's defensive systems are standing down. New Terra hereby formally requests immediate assistance from Earth Defense Command under the mutual protection provisions of the Human Colonial Charter. Thorgan laughed at the transmission. Your Earth Defense Command is 12 days away from this system, human. By the time they arrive, New Terra will be fully integrated into the Zephyrian Empire. Your government will accept this as an accomplished fact. Karen smiled for the first time since the crisis began. General, with respect, you might want to check your intelligence reports about human response times. The last evacuation ship lifted off from New Terra 37 minutes after Karen's transmission. The Zephyrian fleet took control of an empty world, exactly as their battle plan had predicted. Thorgan was satisfied with the operation. Clean, efficient, and no unnecessary casualties. His satisfaction lasted exactly 10 more minutes. 47 minutes after New Terra's distress signal reached Earth, space around the Zephyrian fleet began to ripple in ways that violated everything the aliens thought they knew about physics and faster-than-light travel. What emerged from that rippling space was not what anyone expected. Not even the Zephyrians, who thought they had prepared for every possible human response. The ship that appeared was massive beyond anything in Zephyrian intelligence files. It had not arrived through conventional faster-than-light travel. It had not dropped out of hyperspace or exited a jump tunnel. It had simply become visible, as if it had been there all along, waiting and watching. General Thorgan stared at his displays in confusion and growing alarm. According to his sensors, there was now a human warship twice the size of his flagship, sitting 3,000 kilometers away from his fleet. a ship that his intelligence services insisted could not exist. The human vessel opened a communication channel. The man who appeared on screen wore the uniform of Earth's military, but his ship and his calm expression suggested capabilities that made a mockery of every assessment the Zephyrian Empire had ever made about human defensive capacity. "General Thorgan," the human captain said in a voice that carried absolute confidence, "you have 30 seconds to begin withdrawal from this system." Captain Ryan Phillips stood on the bridge of the UES Leviathan and watched the Zephyrian fleet scramble to understand what had just happened. His ship had been holding position in the new Terra system for 6 hours, completely invisible to every sensor the aliens possessed. Now that the stealth systems were offline, the Leviathan was finally showing up on enemy displays. The reactions were exactly what Ryan expected: confusion, alarm, and the kind of frantic activity that happened when military commanders realized their intelligence reports were completely wrong. "General," Thorgan's response came through the communication channel with typical Zephyrian arrogance. "Human vessel, you are outnumbered 12-1. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences of interfering with legitimate Zephyrian military operations." Ryan turned to his weapons officer. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez had been waiting for this moment since the Leviathan first detected the Zephyrian attack on New Terra. She was one of the few people in the galaxy who truly understood what the ship's main weapon could do. "Amy, please demonstrate our capabilities to the General," Ryan said calmly. "Target the second moon." Amy's fingers moved across controls that accessed systems based on physics principles the Zephyrians had never heard of. The Leviathan's primary weapon was not a gun in any traditional sense. It was a device that could reorganize matter at the quantum level, breaking down the fundamental forces that held atoms together. "Target locked, Captain," Amy reported. "Weapon charged and ready." Ryan opened the communication channel again. "General Thorgan, you now have 15 seconds to begin withdrawal. I suggest you pay attention to what happens next." The Zephyrian commander's response was predictable: threats, demands for surrender, and orders for his fleet to prepare for battle. Thorgan had commanded dozens of successful invasions. He had crushed resistance from species with technology far more advanced than what humans were supposed to possess. One mysterious ship did not worry him. The second moon of New Terra was a small, rocky body about 800 kilometers in diameter. It had no strategic value and no inhabitants. It was also the perfect demonstration target. "Fire," Ryan ordered. The Leviathan's weapon discharged with almost no visible effect. No massive energy beam, no spectacular explosion, no dramatic light show. Just a brief pulse of energy that most observers would have missed entirely. The moon simply disappeared. One moment it was there, a solid celestial body that had been orbiting New Terra for millions of years. The next moment, empty space. The matter that had composed the moon was converted to its component atoms and scattered as a cloud of basic elements that would take centuries to dissipate. The energy signature of the weapon discharge registered on every sensor in the system. The readings showed power levels that exceeded the total output of most planetary defense networks. The Zephyrian ships, built to withstand conventional weapons, would offer no more protection against this technology than paper shields. General Thorgan's bridge fell silent. His tactical officers stared at displays showing sensor readings that should have been impossible. His weapons specialists tried to understand how humans had developed technology that could erase a moon with a single shot. Ryan gave the Zephyrian commander 30 seconds to process what he had just witnessed. Then, he activated the communication channel again. "General, that was a demonstration. The next shot will target your flagship unless you begin immediate withdrawal from this system." Before Thorgan could respond, space around his fleet began to ripple again. 12 more human vessels decloaked in perfect formation around the Zephyrian battle group. Each ship was smaller than the Leviathan but still larger and more advanced than anything in Zephyrian intelligence files. Commander Sarah Parker commanded the UES Falcon, one of the newly revealed ships. Her vessel specialized in electronic warfare and sensor disruption. Within moments of decloaking, The Falcon had penetrated every Zephyrian computer system and was reading their tactical plans in real time. Captain Bill Turner led the UES Stormwind, a ship designed for rapid strike operations. His weapons were different from the Leviathan's matter conversion systems, but equally effective. The Stormwind could disable an entire battle fleet without destroying it, using energy fields that overloaded enemy systems while leaving crew members unharmed. The other human ships each represented different aspects of technology that the galaxy thought was decades away from human achievement. Faster-than-light drives that made distance almost irrelevant, defensive systems that could redirect energy weapons back at their sources, sensor arrays that could track individual ships across multiple star systems. General Thorgan found himself surrounded by forces that his military doctrine had no way to counter. His 12 battle cruisers, pride of the Zephyrian fleet, were suddenly obsolete. Worse than obsolete. They were completely outmatched by technology that should not have existed. "This is impossible," Thorgan muttered to his tactical officer. "Human military capability was thoroughly assessed. They have defensive patrol boats and a few outdated cruisers. Nothing like this." His communications officer looked up from her station with growing alarm. "General, our computer systems are being accessed. The humans are reading our operational orders, fleet positions, and strategic planning files." Captain Ryan Phillips appeared on the main display again. This time his expression was less patient. "General Thorgan, you have now seen a small sample of human defensive capabilities. Your fleet is completely surrounded and outgunned. Your computer systems are compromised. Your position is hopeless. I am offering you one final opportunity to withdraw from this system with your ships and crew intact." The Zephyrian commander looked around his bridge at officers who were waiting for orders he could not give. Fighting was suicide. Staying meant facing weapons that could erase his entire fleet. But retreating would mean admitting that the Zephyrian Empire had been wrong about human military strength. Ryan's voice continued through the communication channel. "I should mention that this engagement is being recorded and transmitted to monitoring stations throughout the galaxy. Your choice here will be witnessed by every major power in known space." That decided it. Thorgan could not win a battle against impossible odds, but he could avoid being remembered as the general who got his entire fleet destroyed through stubborn pride. "Zephyrian fleet, begin withdrawal," Thorgan ordered reluctantly. "All ships, calculate jump coordinates for home space." As the Zephyrian ships prepared to leave, Ryan made one final transmission. "General, please inform your government that the human colonies are under the protection of Earth Defense Command. Any future attacks on human space will be met with an appropriate response." The Zephyrian fleet jumped away from New Terra within 20 minutes of the demonstration. 12 battle cruisers that had arrived expecting easy conquest fled from human space like scouts running from a superior force. As soon as the aliens were gone, Ryan activated a new communication channel that reached every monitoring station and intelligence post in the galaxy. His message was brief and deliberately understated. "This is Captain Phillips of the United Earth ship Leviathan. The Zephyrian attack on New Terra has been repelled. All human colonies remain secure. Earth Defense Command sends greetings to our galactic neighbors and looks forward to continued peaceful relations." The message spread across the galaxy within hours. Every government, every military command, every intelligence service received the same shocking news. The humans, dismissed for 2 centuries as a minor power, had just demonstrated military technology that made them the dominant force in known space. The quiet species was quiet no longer. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened 48 hours after the New Terra incident. Representatives from every major power in the galaxy demanded explanations, threatened sanctions, and accused humans of violations that ranged from treaty fraud to conspiracy against galactic security. Ambassador Helen Martinez sat calmly at the human delegation table while alien representatives shouted questions and made accusations around her. She had been Earth's chief diplomatic representative for 15 years, and most of the other delegates thought they knew her well. A reasonable negotiator who preferred compromise to conflict. A careful diplomat who avoided making enemies or taking strong positions. They were about to learn how wrong they had been about her too. The Andromedan Prime Speaker slammed his communication device on the table. The human delegation will explain how they developed weapons technology that violates established galactic scientific principles. No species advances from basic defensive systems to moon-destroying weapons in such a short time frame. The Altarian, Defense Minister pointed an accusing appendage at Ambassador Martinez. Human intelligence operations have clearly been monitoring our military activities for decades without proper disclosure. This represents a massive violation of interspecies surveillance agreements. Even the usually calm Centaurian trade representative seemed upset. Our economic models for human space are completely incorrect. If human defensive capabilities are this advanced, their industrial and technological base must be far beyond our assessments. Every trade agreement may need renegotiation. Ambassador Martinez waited for the noise to die down before she activated her presentation system. The display showed what appeared to be standard diplomatic materials, charts, graphs, and technical specifications that looked boring and bureaucratic. Honored delegates, Helen began. Earth appreciates your concerns and is prepared to address them fully. However, I believe many of your questions are based on incorrect assumptions about human development and capabilities. She touched a control and the first chart appeared. It showed human technological advancement over the past 2 centuries, but not the version that had been shared with galactic databases. This chart showed real progress, real achievements, and real capabilities that no alien government had suspected. The assumption that humans recently developed advanced weapons technology is incorrect, Helen explained. Earth began developing these systems over 150 years ago. We simply chose not to advertise our progress. The Zephyrian representative, filling in for General Thorgan, who was still trying to explain his retreat to his superiors, objected immediately. This is impossible. Our intelligence services monitor all species for military development. Advanced weapons research cannot be hidden. Helen smiled the kind of smile that made experienced diplomats nervous. Ambassador Krex, your intelligence services monitor what we allow them to monitor. For example, your assessment of human faster-than-light drive technology is based on drives we manufactured specifically for observation by foreign intelligence services. The actual human fleet uses quantum tunnel drives that make conventional faster-than-light travel look like walking. She activated another display that showed ship movement patterns throughout human space over the past decade, but instead of the sparse traffic that alien observers had recorded, this chart showed massive numbers of vessels moving through routes that did not appear on any galactic navigation database. Director Kevin Murphy materialized via holographic projection from Earth. Most delegates had never heard of him, which was exactly how he preferred it. Kevin ran the Human Intelligence Coordination Office, an organization that existed in the gaps between official government departments. Honorable delegates, Kevin began. The confusion about human capabilities stems from a fundamental misunderstanding of our strategic approach to galactic relations. We observed other species for 2 centuries before making first contact. We learned that the galaxy rewards strength but punishes those who display it openly. His presentation showed intelligence data that made every alien representative extremely uncomfortable. Detailed information about military movements, classified, research projects, and strategic planning sessions that should have been completely secret. The human monitoring network consists of over 3,000 sensor stations disguised as research facilities, communication relays, and commercial operations. Kevin continued. We have been tracking every major military movement in the galaxy for decades. Your fleets, your weapons development, your strategic planning, all of it has been observed, analyzed, and countered. The Andromedan Prime Speaker interrupted angrily. You admit to massive espionage operations against peaceful species? This is an act of war. Dr. Lisa Carter's image joined the presentation from her laboratory on Luna, the research facility that alien scientists had dismissed as a minor. Quantum physics project was actually the hub of theoretical research that had revolutionized human understanding of fundamental forces. Prime Speaker. We monitored your species and others for the same reason you monitor each other, Lisa explained, patiently. Intelligence gathering is how civilizations survive in a dangerous galaxy. The difference is that we were better at it than anyone suspected. Her display showed the quantum research that had led to human technological breakthroughs. matter conversion weapons, instantaneous communication systems, faster-than-light drives that operated on entirely different principles than conventional technology. The physics behind human weapon systems has been understood by our scientists. For over a century, Lisa continued, we chose to publish only basic research while developing practical applications in classified facilities. Every species in this council does the same thing. We were simply more successful at keeping our secrets. Admiral Susan Hayes appeared as the final presenter. Her title was officially Coordinator of Defensive Operations, but the aliens were beginning to understand that human military titles meant something very different than they had assumed. The scope of human defensive preparations reflects our commitment to protecting our citizens and maintaining galactic stability, Susan explained. Our hidden installations, advanced ships, and monitoring networks exist to prevent exactly the kind of aggressive expansion that the Zephyrian Empire attempted at New Terra. Her presentation showed the true size of human military capability. Fleets of advanced ships positioned throughout the galaxy, defense installations that could protect or threaten entire star systems, rapid response capabilities that could deploy overwhelming force anywhere in known space within hours. The revelation of human capabilities at New Terra was not planned, Susan continued. We would have preferred to maintain our defensive posture without demonstration, but when civilian colonies come under attack, Earth Defense Command responds with whatever force is necessary to protect human lives. The Galactic Council chamber fell silent as delegates absorbed the full scope of what they had just learned. Every assumption about human weakness had been deliberately cultivated. Every assessment of human technology had been carefully managed. The species they had patronized for 2 centuries had actually been the dominant military power in the galaxy. All along, Ambassador Martinez stood to deliver her closing statement. Earth has no territorial ambitions beyond our current borders. We seek no conquest, no expansion through force, no domination over other species. But we will not allow attacks on human colonies or civilians. She paused to let that sink in before continuing. For 2 centuries, humans have been the quiet guardians of galactic peace. Our strength was hidden, but our commitment to stability was real. We prevented conflicts before they started, mediated disputes before they became wars, and maintained the balance of power that allowed all species to prosper. The session ended with more questions than answers, but one thing was clear to every delegate. The galaxy they thought they understood had never existed. Humanity had been playing a different game entirely, and they had been winning it for 200 years. As representatives returned to their homeworlds to brief their governments, the real work of rebuilding galactic relations was just beginning. Treaties needed revision, military assessments required complete overhaul, trade agreements had to be renegotiated based on accurate information about human capabilities. The age of human secrecy was over. The age of human leadership had begun. 6 months after the New Terra incident, the galaxy looked completely different than it had before one small human colony sent a distress signal. The careful balance of power that had existed for centuries was gone, replaced by a new reality that every species was still trying to understand. The Zephyrian Empire was the first to adapt to the new situation. Emperor Zareth himself traveled to Earth for direct negotiations with human leadership. It was the first time in Zephyrian history that their ruler had personally visited another species' homeworld to request talks. President Maria Gonzalez met with Emperor Zareth in the rebuilt United Nations building in New York. The meeting was broadcast across the galaxy, showing 2 leaders who represented very different approaches to interstellar relations sitting down to discuss the future. Emperor Zareth, President Gonzalez began, Earth appreciates your willingness to pursue diplomatic solutions to our recent misunderstanding. The Zephyrian leader, whose species had built an empire through military conquest, found himself in the unusual position of asking for terms rather than dictating them. President Gonzalez, the Zephyrian Empire acknowledges that our assessment of human defensive capabilities was incomplete. We seek to establish new agreements that reflect current realities. What those current realities meant became clear as other species rushed to renegotiate their relationships with humanity. The Andromedan Republic offered exclusive trade deals. The Altarian Federation proposed joint research projects. The Centaurian Trade Union suggested economic partnerships that would have been unthinkable when they thought humans were minor players. Admiral Jake Morrison, promoted after the crisis, revealed the true scope of human space operations, oversaw the gradual disclosure of Earth's defensive network. What had appeared to be sparse human territory protected by outdated patrol boats was actually a sophisticated defensive zone controlled by automated systems that most species could not even detect. The asteroid mining operations that alien ships had passed for decades were revealed to be weapons platforms. The research stations that scientists had ignored were actually sensor arrays that could track movement across multiple star systems. The communication relays that seemed to handle routine civilian traffic were quantum communication hubs that connected every human installation in real time. The disclosure process has to be carefully managed, Jake explained to his staff during a briefing at the newly expanded Luna Defense Command. We spent 2 centuries building this network in secret. Revealing everything at once would destabilize half the governments in the galaxy. Captain Ryan Phillips, now commanding the revealed human fleet, worked with diplomatic teams to demonstrate human capabilities without triggering panic. The Leviathan and her sister ships conducted carefully planned exercises that showed their advanced technology while emphasizing their defensive purpose. We are not conquerors, Ryan explained during a presentation to Galactic Council military observers. Human fleet doctrine focuses on protection and deterrence. Our weapons exist to prevent wars, not to start them. The most significant changes came in areas that had nothing to do with military power. Human scientists, no longer required to hide their research, began sharing discoveries that advanced galactic understanding of physics, medicine, and engineering by decades. Dr. Lisa Carter found herself leading joint research projects with alien scientists who had previously dismissed human theoretical work. Her quantum physics research opened new possibilities for faster-than-light communication, energy generation, and materials science that benefited every species in the galaxy. The secrecy was necessary for security, Lisa explained to a gathering of galactic scientists, but it prevented us from collaborating on projects that could help everyone. Now we can work together on challenges that no single species could solve alone. Trade relationships shifted as alien governments realized that human industrial capacity was far greater than they had suspected. Planets that had been exporting raw materials to human space discovered they were actually supplying manufacturing facilities that produced some of the most advanced technology in the galaxy. The economic implications were staggering. Human space contained industries that other species had not known existed, research facilities that had been developing new technologies for decades, manufacturing capabilities that could supply military or civilian needs on a galactic scale. Director Kevin Murphy's Intelligence Coordination Office became an official diplomatic entity, working openly with other species to share information about security threats and criminal activities. The network that had been watching alien governments in secret now worked with them to maintain stability and prevent conflicts. Information sharing prevents misunderstandings, Kevin explained to intelligence chiefs from across the galaxy. Most wars start because governments make decisions based on incomplete or incorrect information. We can help prevent that. The most important changes were philosophical. Species that had competed through military strength found themselves reconsidering their approaches to interstellar relations. The example of human success through patient preparation and careful diplomacy offered an alternative to the traditional cycle of expansion and conquest. The Altarian Federation began reducing their military spending and investing in research and development. The Andromedan Republic started diplomatic initiatives to resolve border disputes that had been sources of tension for decades. Even the Zephyrian Empire began exploring ways to maintain influence through economic cooperation rather than military pressure. President Gonzalez addressed the reformed Galactic Council 1 year after the New Terra incident. Her speech was broadcast to every inhabited world in known space, reaching billions of beings who were still adjusting to the new galactic order. The revelation of human capabilities was never our goal, she explained. We would have preferred to continue our role as quiet guardians of galactic peace. But when that was no longer possible, we chose transparency over continued deception. She paused to look around the council chamber, where alien representatives listened with the kind of attention that came from genuine respect rather than polite protocol. The galaxy we all inhabit is dangerous. There are threats that no single species can face alone. Criminal organizations, rogue governments, natural disasters that affect entire star systems. These challenges require cooperation, shared resources, and mutual trust. The new galactic order that emerged was more stable than what had come before. The hidden arms races that had driven military competition for centuries were replaced by open cooperation on defensive technologies. Species that had viewed each other as potential threats began working together on shared challenges. Human leadership was accepted not because other species feared human weapons, but because 2 centuries of quiet competence had proven that humans could be trusted with power. They had been strong enough to dominate the galaxy for decades, but had chosen restraint and cooperation instead of conquest. Commander Jake Morrison, now responsible for coordinating defense operations across human space, reflected on how much had changed since that quiet morning when he had monitored routine space traffic at Luna Station. "We always knew this day would come," he told his staff during a planning session. "You cannot keep secrets forever in a galaxy full of intelligent species. But we proved that strength and wisdom can coexist, that power can be used to protect rather than to conquer." The galaxy settled into its new equilibrium, with humanity no longer hiding in plain sight, but serving as the acknowledged protectors of a peace they had been maintaining all along. One signal had been enough to reveal their true capabilities. It had also been enough to ensure that those capabilities would be used to build a better future for every species among the stars.